My name is Jesse Stone. For 34 years, I've built a life on a simple premise: that code, like people, can be understood. There is a logic to it. A vulnerability can be found, patched, and secured. I believed the same was true of the human heart. I was wrong. The most dangerous threats aren't the ones lurking in the shadows of the digital world. They are the ones that sit across from you at the dinner table, smiling, their secrets hidden behind a mask of normalcy. My story begins not with a bang, but with the quiet hum of a California morning, in a suburb of San Jose where the sun dappled through the oak trees and everything was a lie. The smell of Olivia's honey and oat pancakes filled the kitchen, a sweet, comforting scent that usually promised a good day. My daughter, Grace, her small brow furrowed in concentration, was carefully arranging a pile of blueberries on top of hers, creating a wobbly smiley face. "Look, Daddy! A happy pancake!" she exclaimed, her voice bright and full of joy. I smiled. "I see that, sweetheart. The happiest pancake I've ever seen. Almost too happy to eat." "No, Daddy! You have to eat the happy ones first," she giggled. Olivia smiled from the counter. "Don't give him an excuse, Gracie. He'll drown it in syrup and the smile will sink." We laughed. This was my world. This kitchen. Their love. It was my firewall against the outside world. From my chair, I could see the headline of the morning's financial section left on the counter. "Stone Enterprises readies for landmark will reading." The words felt like a thundercloud on our sunny breakfast. "You're thinking about it again, aren't you?" "The meeting." Olivia's voice was soft with concern. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. "Your tell is that you stopped drinking your tea. You just hold the cup and stare into it like you're searching for answers in the leaves." She was right. The ceramic mug was warm in my hands, but the tea inside was going cold. "It's just, I can feel the tension already," I confessed. "Dad's last call was all business. Jason, I haven't heard from him in weeks. Not since the last argument." "What was it about this time?" Olivia asked. "The same thing it's always about. Grandpa's legacy. Jason is convinced that because I followed my own path into tech, and not the family business, that I somehow betrayed him. He said Grandpa's favoritism blinded everyone." "That's not true," Olivia said firmly. "Reginald was proud of you. He told me so." "I know. I just wish the rest of my family saw it that way. My grandfather used to tell me stories when I was little. He'd say, 'Jesse, a man's wealth is measured in his assets, but his worth is measured in his word.' You remember that. Money can be lost, stolen, squandered. But a reputation for integrity? That is a fortress. And a family that trusts one another? That is an empire nothing can break." His words were a fortress I clung to now. But I had no idea how soon that fortress would be tested. After breakfast, I kissed Olivia goodbye and ruffled Grace's hair. "Be good for your mom, okay? Daddy has that important meeting. Will you be back to read a story tonight?" Grace asked, her big eyes hopeful. "Nothing could stop me," I promised. I stepped out into the crisp autumn air. I walked to my car, my mind already drifting. I was so lost in thought that the sudden sound made me jump out of my skin. Bang! 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 It was a frantic, desperate pounding on my car window. I turned, my heart leaping into my throat. There, his face etched with pure panic, was Sam. Sam was an elderly man who often rested on a bench near the end of our street. He was a quiet, kind soul down on his luck, and I often stopped to chat with him. But there was no kindness on his face today. His eyes were wide with fear. "Jesse! Don't drive that car!" he shouted, his voice hoarse and strained. I quickly opened the door and stepped out. "Sam? What's wrong?" He was breathing heavily, his trembling hand pointing toward the underside of my car. "Last night, I saw someone, a shadow. Dressed all in black, face covered. They crawled under your car, Jesse. They were under there for a few minutes. Then they just slithered away into the dark. I knew it was wrong. I knew it. My blood ran cold. I knelt down on the damp pavement, peering into the darkness beneath the car. I caught a glint. A slick, dark pool of fluid was slowly spreading on the ground. My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the cold, oily liquid. I shifted, leaning further. And then I saw it. A clean, precise cut. The brake line. The world seemed to tilt. If I had gotten into that car, if I had driven onto the freeway, I would have plowed straight into traffic. It would have been a horrific, fatal accident. No one would ever suspect it was murder. I sank back onto my heels, my hands trembling uncontrollably. I looked up at Sam. You saved my life," I whispered. Sam shook his head. "You've shown me kindness, Jesse. Today I am just returning that kindness." He gave me a slight, sad nod before turning and walking away. I was left alone. The serene suburban street no longer felt safe. Every window seemed like a watching eye. Who did this? The question echoed in my mind. My mind immediately began scanning the possibilities. It landed on the one source of conflict in my life, my family. The will reading. My father's cold, calculating tone. My mother's anxious pleas for peace. My brother Jason's bitter, resentful words. Could it be? Could my own flesh and blood truly want me dead over money? The thought was monstrous. But the evidence was literally leaking out from under my car. I pulled out my phone to call 911. My thumb hovered over the call button. But then my professional instincts kicked in. If I called the police now, the culprit would be warned. They would cover their tracks. I'd be a sitting duck for their next attempt. No. I had to take control. I had to make them believe they had succeeded. Only when their guard was down would they make a mistake. It was a dangerous, reckless idea. But it was the only one I had. I scrolled through my contacts and found the number for my oldest and most trusted friend, Joseph Grant. He was a doctor at the city hospital. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "Jesse? Hey, what's up?" His voice was cheerful. "Joseph," I said, my voice strained. "I need your help. Something big has happened." I told him everything. Sam's warning. The severed brake line. My suspicion about my family. "Jesse, are you sure? You have to call the police." "And tell them what?" I argued. "That my rich family might be trying to kill me? Without proof, it sounds like paranoia. Joseph, I need to make them think they've won." A long silence followed. "What are you saying, Jesse?" "I'm saying I need to stage an accident. A car accident. I need everyone to believe that I am critically injured, or even dead." "You're insane," Joseph hissed. "The legal ramifications, and Olivia. Grace. You're going to put them through that." The mention of my wife and daughter was a physical pain. "I don't want to. But if I don't do this, there will be a real accident next time. I have to protect them." Finally, he let out a long, weary sigh. Okay, Jesse. I'll help you. But this plan has to be perfect." My next call was to a man named Walter Briggs, a private investigator. "Walter, it's Jesse Stone. I need your help. Someone just tried to kill me. I believe it's someone in my own family." I gave him the condensed version. "I need you to watch them. My father, mother, brother. I'm going to make them think I'm on my deathbed. I need you to catch them in the act." "Understood," Walter said, his tone all business. "Surveillance and documentation. I'll have a team on them within the hour." The wheels were in motion. There was no turning back. The hardest part was next. I had to go back inside and say goodbye. I walked back into the house. Olivia looked up, surprised. "Jesse? Did you forget something?" I walked over to her and pulled her into a warm, tight hug. "I just wanted to say I love you," I whispered. "I love you too. Is everything okay? You look pale." "Just pre-meeting jitters," I lied, forcing a smile. It's going to be a long day. I might be home late. I then knelt down beside Grace. And I love you, my little artist. She threw her arms around my neck. Love you, Daddy. Will you read 2 stories tonight? I hugged her tightly. I will read you 100 stories, I promised her. Walking out of that house was the hardest thing I had ever done. The plan was complex. I called a mobile mechanic I trusted. He arrived, confirmed the brake line was severed, and replaced it. Once the car was safe, I drove to a secluded, wooded road on the outskirts of the city. My heart was a drum solo in my chest. I parked the car near a large old oak tree. Using a brick, I carefully set it on the gas pedal. I released the brake and jumped clear. The engine roared. The car shot forward and slammed into the tree with a sickening crash. The airbags exploded. Steam hissed from the crumpled hood. I lay down on the grass, trying to slow my breathing. Within minutes I heard sirens. The ambulance arrived. The paramedics rushed out. They carefully lifted me onto a stretcher. One of them applied theatrical makeup to my face and arms, creating the illusion of severe injuries. Victim is unconscious, unresponsive. Signs of significant trauma, one of them said into his radio. They loaded me into the ambulance. The performance had begun. At the hospital, I was taken to a secluded room with security monitors. Joseph was there, his face pale. It's done. The story is on the news. Your family has been notified. My stomach churned. Olivia. I called her myself. I told her you were alive but badly hurt. That you were in a coma. She's on her way. Jessie, she was hysterical. I felt like the lowest form of life. I was causing unimaginable pain. Show me the screens, I said, my voice hollow. I sat down. The hallway outside the ICU was empty. I didn't have to wait long. The first to arrive were my parents. My father, Gregory, strode in like he was entering a boardroom. His suit was impeccable. But his face was pale, his jaw tight. He wasn't grieving, he was assessing. My mother, Patricia, clung to his arm. She dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief, her shoulders shaking. But from my bird's-eye view, I could see it. Her eyes, between dabs, were sharp and clear. She was scanning the hallway. She was performing. A few minutes later, my brother, Jason, arrived. He looked disheveled. He walked up to my parents, his face a mask of shock. Mom? Dad? What happened? Is it true? Is Jessie? He asked, his voice cracking. My father put a hand on his shoulder. We don't know anything yet, son. They huddled together. My father's lips were moving fast, low, and intense. My mother was nodding. Jason was listening, but a faint, almost imperceptible smirk tugged at his mouth for a split second before he wiped it away. They weren't grieving. They were strategizing. My heart turned to stone. Then, Olivia burst into the hallway, her face streaked with tears, her eyes wild with fear. She was holding Grace's hand. My little girl looked confused and scared. Where is he? Where's my husband? Olivia demanded. A nurse gently guided her to a chair. Olivia collapsed, pulling Grace onto her lap. She buried her face in Grace's hair, her body shaking. Grace looked up, her lower lip trembling. Mommy? Is Daddy not coming back? The sound of her small, scared voice was like a physical blow. I doubled over, a sob catching in my own throat. Joseph put a steadying hand on my shoulder. I can't do this to them, Joseph. I choked out. You have to, he said. If you stop now, it was all for nothing. They will be in even greater danger. You have to be strong for them now, so you can be safe with them later. I knew he was right. I forced myself to watch. I watched as my parents approached Olivia. My mother put on a show of comfort, but her eyes were cold. My father stood over them, looking like a general. Jason hung back, watching. They were all here, playing their parts. And I was the audience, hidden in the shadows, finally seeing them for who they truly were. The game was on. Hours bled into one another in that sterile, hidden room. The glow of the security monitors was my only light. Joseph brought me food I couldn't eat. My eyes were glued to the screen, watching the heartbreaking tableau of my wife and daughter waiting in fear, and the chilling performance of my parents and brother. They eventually left, my father citing an important meeting with the lawyer to sort out this mess. Their departure felt like a predator leaving its prey, confident of a later kill. Olivia refused to leave. She slept fitfully in an uncomfortable chair, Grace curled up in her lap. My phone buzzed. A text from Walter. Walter, subject G, Gregory, NP, Patricia, en route to law office of H, Wallace. Subject J, Jason, has separated. Heading south in his vehicle. My team is following. Stand by. This was it. The first move. I felt a jolt of adrenaline. The waiting was agony. Another hour passed. Then, a new email alert popped up from Walter. The subject line. Audio file Le Papillon. My hands trembled as I put in my earbuds and opened the file. The sound of clinking glasses and soft restaurant music filled my ears. Then, my father's voice, low and cold, unmistakable. If Jesse doesn't pull through, and let's be honest, the doctors aren't hopeful, the estate will need to be adjusted immediately. His share naturally reverts to us as the primary heirs. My mother's voice, smoother but just as calculating, chimed in. We need to move quickly, Gregory. Before the lawyer throws up any obstacles. Henry Wallace isn't someone to underestimate. He was far too loyal to father. Then Jason's voice, eager and sharp. The guy did a clean job. Now we just wait for Jesse to be gone and we'll get his share. Grandpa always favored him. This is our chance to take back what should have been ours. The guy did a clean job. The words echoed in my skull, a confirmation of my worst nightmare. They knew. They all knew. They weren't just benefiting from this, they had orchestrated it. They were discussing my murder as if it were a minor business transaction. A white-hot rage washed over me, so intense it was followed by a wave of nauseating cold. I ripped the earbuds out and slammed my fist on the desk, the pain a sharp, grounding shock. Joseph, who had been dozing in a chair, jolted awake. Jesse? What is it? I couldn't speak. I just pointed at the computer screen, at the audio file. He put the earbuds in and listened. His face drained of color. My God! He whispered. They're monsters. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Walter. Walter, subject J meeting with unknown male, abandoned industrial zone. Photos attached. Stand by for ID. The photos loaded slowly. Grainy, but clear enough. Jason's black SUV parked in a lot full of weeds. Jason himself, handing a thick white envelope to a muscular, bald man whose arms were covered in dark tattoos. The man's face was grim, professional. This was no chance encounter. This was a business meeting. Walter, got an ID. Vince Malone. Small-time enforcer, known for muscle work and vehicle modifications. Has a record for assault, theft, vandalism. Perfect candidate for cheap, dirty work. Jason. My little brother. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike. He hadn't just agreed to this, he was the point man. He was the one who hired the talent. The hollow ache in my chest was now filled with a solid, cold resolve. The emotional shock was gone, replaced by a focused fury. I had them. Now I needed irrefutable proof that would stand up in court. I texted Walter back. Jesse, I need everything. Bank records for Jason. Any large, recent cash withdrawals. Cell tower logs for his phone placing him near my house last night. Everything on Malone. Can you get it? Walter, already on it. It'll take time and some creative access. But consider it done. How are you holding up? I looked at the monitor. Olivia was stirring, gently waking Grace. The sight of them, so vulnerable, steeled my nerve. Jesse, I'm still in the game. Get me what we need. The next 48 hours were a blur of silent vigilance and digital ghosts. From my hidden room, I became a spectator to my own life unraveling. News outlets picked up the story of my tragic accident. Friends and colleagues called Olivia, their voices filled with sympathy she couldn't fully accept because she was clinging to a hope I had given her. Meanwhile, Walter was a phantom in the city's digital bloodstream. His reports started trickling in, each one a nail in my family's coffin. An email arrived with bank statements attached. 3 days ago, Jason had withdrawn $5,000 in cash from his account. A transaction that was, for him, unusually large and suspiciously untraceable. Another report, cell tower data placed Jason's phone in the vicinity of my neighborhood between 11:45 p.m. and 12:15 a.m. on the night of the sabotage. The exact window of time Sam had described. Walter had even managed to get a hold of Vince Malone's financials. A deposit of $2,000 had been made into his nearly empty account the morning after my accident. The first installment of his blood money. The evidence was building into an undeniable wall. But it was all circumstantial. We had Jason paying someone, and that someone receiving money. We had Jason near the scene. We had the family discussing the outcome. But we didn't have a direct confession linking the payment to the specific act of cutting my brake line. We needed Malone to talk. "I want to confront him," I said to Joseph, the idea forming even as I said it. "Absolutely not," Joseph said, horrified. "Jesse, he's a dangerous criminal. He already tried to kill you once." "Not me," I said, a plan crystallizing. "Walter. Walter can get to him. He can offer him a deal. More money than Jason offered, in exchange for his testimony. Play on his greed and his desire to avoid a long prison sentence. It was a risk. If Malone was loyal to Jason, or just paranoid, he could vanish. Or he could warn Jason. But it was the only way to cement the case. I called Walter and laid out the idea. "It's risky, Stone," Walter grunted. "Guys like Malone are unpredictable. But it might work. His type is loyal to cash, not people. I'll set up a meet. A public place. I'll wear a wire." The wait was excruciating. Walter was to meet Malone at a busy public market, a place with enough noise and crowd to provide cover but not enough seclusion for an ambush. Finally, my phone rang. It was Walter. "It's done," he said, his voice crackling with static but tinged with satisfaction. "I've got it all on recording. He sang like a canary for the right price." He sent the audio file. I listened, my heart thumping. Walter's voice, calm and conversational. "Look, Vince. This is way bigger than you thought. Attempted murder. The guy you tried to kill has evidence on the guy who paid you. You're looking at decades." Malone's voice, gruff and nervous. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. Jason Stone. $5,000. Cut brake line. Ring a bell? Now I represent a party who is willing to make all this go away. A party who will pay you double what Jason promised, in cash, right now. All you have to do is tell me the whole story, on record. Then you walk away, a richer man. Or you can take your chances with the police." A long pause. The sound of crowd noise. Then Malone's voice, defeated. "Fine. Yeah. Jason Stone. He found me. Said he had a problem. His brother was in the way of a big payday. Needed it to look like an accident. Paid me $2,000 up front. Said I'd get 3 more when the job was done. I did it. That's it. I just did the job. It was over. We had it. The final, direct link. I felt no triumph. Only a profound, weary sadness. I had the proof I needed to destroy my own family. Now came the hardest part, the endgame. I arranged a secret meeting with Henry Wallace, my grandfather's lawyer. I met him in a quiet corner of a public library. His face, usually an unreadable mask of professionalism, was a portrait of shock and dismay as I laid out the entire story and played him the key pieces of evidence. "Good heavens, Jesse," he breathed, removing his glasses to pinch the bridge of his nose. Reginald would be appalled. Absolutely appalled. He took a deep breath, composing himself. What do you need from me? The will reading is still scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, I said. I wanted to proceed. I want them all in that room, confident and victorious. And then I want to walk in. I want them to see me. And then I want you to play that recording for everyone to hear. Henry Wallace nodded slowly, a grim smile touching his lips. It would be my honor to help you see this through, Jessie. For Reginald. The following day, I put on the same suit I'd worn that fateful morning. It felt like a soldier putting on armor. Joseph clapped me on the shoulder. Ready? No, I said honestly. But let's do it anyway. We took a service elevator down to the garage and slipped into a waiting car Walter had arranged. We drove to Henry Wallace's office building. My heart was a steady, heavy drumbeat. We entered through a back entrance and waited in Henry's private adjoining room. I could hear the murmur of voices through the wall. My father's low, authoritative tone. My mother's light, nervous laughter. Jason's impatient sigh. A tragic day, but we must be strong and honor Reginald's wishes. My father was saying, the hypocrisy making me nauseous. Henry Wallace called the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming during this difficult time. Before we begin the reading of the last will and testament of Reginald Stone, there is a matter that must be addressed. This was my cue. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and walked into the conference room. The effect was instantaneous. The room fell into a dead, profound silence. My mother let out a choked gasp, her hand flying to her mouth, her face turning sheet white. No, it can't be! My father froze, his pen clattering onto the legal pad in front of him. His eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated shock, then narrowed into slits of pure fury. He looked from me to Henry and back again, realizing he'd been trapped. Jason was the most dramatic. He shot to his feet, his chair screeching backwards. He pointed a shaking finger at me, his face a grotesque mask of panic and disbelief. You were supposed to be dead. How? What is this? It's called justice, Jason, I said, my voice cold and steady, though my knees were trembling. I looked at each of them in turn. Hello, father. Mother. Brother. Miss me? I sat down at the table, directly across from them. Henry Wallace, without a word, plugged a small speaker into his laptop. My client has provided me with compelling evidence of a conspiracy against his life, Henry stated calmly. You would all do well to listen carefully. And then he played it. The audio from the restaurant. My family's cold, greedy words filled the wood-paneled room. Then, the piece de resistance, Vince Malone's confession, naming Jason explicitly. The color drained from Jason's face. He began to stammer. That's a lie. He's lying. It's a setup. But his protests were weak, pathetic. The truth was undeniable. Before any of them could form a coherent defense, the conference room door opened again. 2 police officers walked in, their expressions stern and professional. Gregory Stone, Patricia Stone, Jason Stone, one officer said, his voice echoing in the silent room. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent. I sat perfectly still as the officers handcuffed my family. My mother was sobbing now, real tears of shame and terror. My father was silent, his head bowed, his entire world crumbling. Jason was still muttering denials, his eyes wild with panic as he was led away. I felt no victory. Only a vast, empty silence where my family used to be. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The scandal ripped through San Jose society. Stone family heirs arrested in murder plot, screamed the headlines. The evidence was so overwhelming that their lawyers quickly brokered a plea deal. Jason, as the primary conspirator, received a lengthy prison sentence. My parents, as accomplices, received significant terms as well. Their greed had cost them everything, their freedom, their reputation, and their family. A few weeks later, once the media circus had died down, Henry Wallace gathered the remaining family, myself, Olivia, Grace, and a few distant relatives who had no part in the scheme, for the true, official reading of my grandfather's will. The atmosphere was somber but peaceful. I held Olivia's hand tightly. Grace sat on my lap, playing quietly. Henry began to read. The will was detailed, complex, and profoundly fair. My grandfather had left generous bequests to charities, to longtime employees, and to all of his grandchildren. Then he came to the core of the estate. And to my son, Gregory, and my daughter-in-law, Patricia, I leave a 30% share of my entire estate, including proceeds from the commercial properties. Henry read. I felt Olivia's hand tighten in mine. That was a vast fortune. And to my grandson, Jason Stone, I leave a 25% share, including a controlling interest in the Stone Enterprises development firm. The numbers hung in the air. They were not slighted. They were not forgotten. My grandfather had been more than fair. He had been generous. Finally, Henry read the last part. And to my grandson, Jesse Stone, I leave a 25% share, along with my personal estate and the family home. I do this not out of favoritism, but because Jesse has always understood that a legacy is not what you take, but what you build. He has built a life of integrity, and I am profoundly proud of him. The remaining 20% was divided among other relatives. The irony was so bitter it was almost poetic. My parents and brother had conspired to commit murder because they feared I would get everything. In reality, they would have been wealthy beyond most people's dreams. Their own greed and jealousy had blinded them to my grandfather's true intention, to take care of all of his family. Their crimes meant they would never see a single penny of it. The true legacy was never the money. It was the lesson. Greed consumes everything. Justice, however late, always finds a way. And family is measured in love and trust, not in wealth. Later that day, I walked back into my own home. Olivia was in the kitchen. She turned, and for a moment, a flicker of the old fear crossed her face, the fear that this was all a dream, that I would disappear again. Then I smiled, and she ran into my arms. Grace came barreling into our legs. Daddy! You're home for real now. I'm home for real now, sweetheart, I said, picking her up and holding them both. And I believe I owe you about 100 stories. That night, as I read to Grace until she fell asleep, I finally understood my grandfather's wisdom. The empire he built wasn't made of steel and glass. It was right here, in this room. It was built on promises kept, on love given freely, and on the integrity to do what's right, no matter the cost. My name is Jesse Stone. My family tried to break me, but they only showed me what I was truly made of. And my legacy, the one I will pass on to my daughter, will be built on that unshakable foundation.